An advocacy group has filed a first-of-its-kind lawsuit against the Trump administration, challenging its handling of the Epstein Files and trying to force their release. Joining me now, Denver Riggleman, former Republican congressman and former senior advisor to the January 6th committee, Adam Wren, senior national politics correspondent for Politico, and Skye Perryman, president and CEO of Democracy Forward. That's the organization, in fact, that filed that suit. Welcome to all three of you. So, Skye, this lawsuit, as I said, it is the first of its kind. What are you looking to find? Is it phone calls, emails, chats? And what prompted this lawsuit? Did it come after a Freedom of Information Act request? And if so, what happened to that?
Yeah, we're really trying to figure out what this administration is hiding. That's the purpose of the lawsuit. We did file a request with the federal government, with the Department of Justice, seeking information about communications on the administration's handling of the files with the White House press office, with other agencies like the FBI. This is an administration that is really politicized in many ways, the law enforcement process. And we know that there is a cover up and that there is something that they're hiding. And that is what we are seeking to get to the bottom of it. To your question about a Freedom of Information Act request, we did file that. And the government's just dragging its feet. There is a law on the books that requires that people, when there are issues like this, where there's a lot of media interest, where there's a lot of public interest in these issues, that the government respond promptly. And they have not responded to our request for expedited processing. And so we went to court in order to force the release of these materials. And
how long do you think it's going to take to actually get this lawsuit going? Because you can imagine it's going to be challenged, if not already.
Well, we filed it, last week, and we're going to be moving forward this next week with additional filings. So our team at Democracy Forward is going to make sure that we're pushing it as aggressively as possible, really because it's important that people be able to know what their government is up to, especially here, where the government has said, the administration has said it is the most transparent administration ever. We don't see that. We see them at every turn trying to operate in the shadows. And so we're going to use the courts to figure out what's going on.
Okay. Well, you are a tenacious group, so if anyone can do it, you will. I'm curious, Denver, do you think this is a good strategy? And since records related to criminal investigations are generally shielded, do you see any reasons the government could have for not turning over their communications?
Yeah, if they're hiding something, I think it's a great idea. When I was on the January 6th committee, we got to see the texts and the emails and the metadata, with the telephone calls that were going between, massive groups that were part of that. And I got to do that for 20 years when I was in the military, and then got to do some other things like that too. And you're tracking bad actors and identifying metadata and looking at communications and things of that nature. So I think it's a great idea for a couple reasons. Number one, this administration promised that they were going to release the files immediately. So why not file a lawsuit just to make sure that they back up the promise that they gave to the American people to be completely transparent? The second thing, too, is we need to keep it out there. We need to keep it in the news, because what you're looking at, and it's incredible watching you before, Alex, and talking about the things you were talking about, the D.C. ridiculousness with the National Guard, the firing of the FBI agents, the new Census Bureau conspiracy theories, going after President Obama, going after, Hillary Clinton with the conspiracy theories that they have there with this sort of Russiagate ridiculousness. They are flooding the zone right now. So when you have somebody brilliant and savvy enough to say, hey, we want to look at the comms that are going on because this administration promised to release them on day one, and we're 8 months into the administration, I think that's a brilliant move. It shows that people care, but it also ensures that the American people know, right, that this administration hasn't kept their promises on the Epstein Files. And why in the heck are they having private meetings on how to message this? But this is simply a pedophile and child trafficker that everybody's heard about, for the past 7 to 8 months.
Adam, you've been writing about the MAGA outrage over the Epstein Files, including Laura Loomer, whom you've interviewed. She's, of course, the far-right activist who blew this story wide open. What can you tell us about her role and how Trump supporters plan to keep Epstein front and center, and how long the White House can sustain not making any information public?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Alex, she's been an agitator holding Trump's and the White House's feet to the fire on the campaign promises that he made in releasing these files. And she has really continued to elevate this issue out in the country in a way that attracts reporters like me and programs like this to focus on what she's doing. She's turning the spotlight back on this issue every time it starts to fade away. Of course, the White House would like to be talking about literally anything else aside from this, but the spotlight continues to shine on and will, given this lawsuit, given the discharge petition that's ripening in the House that we'll see when lawmakers come back from recess. And so she's really continuing to keep this story in the headlines.
And Skye, more and more survivors are demanding full transparency. In fact, here's a former Baywatch actress whose lawyer says she filed a police report against Epstein. This was in 1997. Take a listen.
I believe, yes, the files should be released. I'm tired of the government saying that they want to release them. So please just do it.
I mean, why do you think the White House is dragging this out instead of releasing even redacted documents?
Because they have something to hide. I mean, that is the only conclusion about any of this. Why would you make a campaign promise and make a promise to the American people and then drag your feet? And what is going on here? So, you know, our lawsuit, just to be plain about it, had the government promptly responded, we wouldn't be in court right now. You know, it had the opportunity to say there aren't any communications between the Department of Justice and the FBI and the White House press office trying to potentially engage in a cover-up. So that's why we are going to be fighting vigorously in court so that the American people can understand what this government is doing.
Can I just ask you too, Skye? I mean, not to get in the head of Donald Trump, but why make the promise in the first place, right? Well, because he's put himself here.
You know, this is a really good question, but I'll tell you what we see in our work every day. This is an administration that doesn't believe that people will call them on their lies. It doesn't believe that people will stand up and say, you know, really, we expect you to do the right thing. And what we see in our work is that whenever people do that, they don't have a good response. Sometimes they back away or they come up, you know, they have to sort of distract and do other things. And so that's really, I think, a powerful lesson here is that we are sending the American people, you know, we are sending this administration a message that when you say something, we're going to hold you to it, and we'll take you to court if we have to in order to hold you to it.
So, Denver, you have Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who's now asking for an oversight committee hearing to center survivors' voices and listen to them. Here's what another survivor told my colleague Ari Melber. Let's watch.
This is a very personal, painful, both physically, emotionally, mentally, intellectually painful experience to go through, to see the level of injustice. The victims did the right thing. They went to authorities. They've done all the right things. They have told their story over and over and over again, and no one is listening. I have not heard the words Epstein survivor out of the White House, ever.
What is the downside to the White House acknowledging the hundreds of young women and teenage girls abused in this sex trafficking operation?
You know, it's interesting. I think it actually folds into the prior question when you have conspiracy theorists running on conspiracy theories about a real criminal conspiracy. You sort of have this nutbag on nutbag violence. And the people that get left out in the cold are the Epstein survivors. And the reason they don't want to mention is they don't want to draw attention to it. When you talk about the redactions and hiding something, here's the problem with conspiracy theorists. They're going to look behind the black lines on a redacted document and wonder if that's Donald Trump or other people in the deep state or the globalists that they're consumed about based on their own conspiratorial thinking. So the survivors are left out in the cold while we have this insane battle going on. You know, we were talking about Laura Loomer, and I really do applaud anybody that interviews Laura Loomer. I mean, that's courageous, right? I mean, that's somebody who has real issues with conspiracy theories. And these people are screaming about what's going on, but the survivors cannot be mentioned by the Trump administration. And I think a lot of that has to do with what questions are downstream. If you think about Virginia Roberts, Virginia Giuffre, when she was at Mar-a-Lago, we know that she was taken from there. And it wasn't until 4 years later that seemingly Trump and Epstein had a falling out. And I think if they mention the survivors, they feel they're awful consultants there and the conspiracy theorists, it's just going to create more problems for Trump. And I think that's, again, why the lawsuit, looking at what Laura Loomer's doing, all this is really beneficial to the truth coming out. But again, you have conspiracy theorist on conspiracy theorist violence right now, and the victims are being left in the cold.
So, Adam, ABC News reports that Maxwell said nothing during her meeting with Todd Blanche that would be harmful to President Trump, adding that the conversations were recorded and the administration is considering releasing transcripts and perhaps even the audio. Would this bring the temperature down with the base?
You know, I think any piece of information at this point would bring down the temperature a little bit, but this is not going to entirely go away until the Epstein files in full are released. I mean, this is the language that was used. The grand jury testimony is not going to satisfy it. This won't satisfy it. It's got to be a complete release of the Epstein files, or people like Laura Loomer are not going to go quietly into the good night. I mean, this is going to continue to haunt the administration. And Loomer herself told me that it threatens to consume Donald Trump's presidency, and we're seeing that as well. It may have died down over the last couple of weeks, but even this week, with reporting by CNN and others about the so-called meeting that took place to discuss messaging around this, the stories like that are going to continue to bubble up.
Okay. Skye Perryman, you're such a busy lady. I want to thank you for your time with us. Appreciate that. But Denver and Adam, you guys are going to stay with me because we're going to talk about how MAGA world is having a hard time swallowing a difficult truth. We'll get to that later.